Now, last month, when I was home in Indiana, coming down from Northwest Indiana to our capital city of Indianapolis on Interstate 65, for the umpteenth time, as I drive from north to south or south to north on that road, I pass through wind farms of literally thousands of windmills. Interestingly enough, and as I had observed even this time, many of them are not turning. There are windmills, a few of them turning, driven by the wind, but most of them not turning. And I continue to ask the question. We've got several thousands of these. It looks like fewer than 100 or less, or comparable number are not operating. I wonder why, and why this is the taxpayer getting a good deal on this? Well, I want to give you just a little bit of history of how all this came to be put in place. Back in the early 90s, in fact, in 1992, the Congress passed the Energy Policy Act of 1992, which included the Renewable Electricity Production Tax Credit, called the PTC. The point here was that as we look at alternative ways to produce electricity, to reduce our dependence on oil and fossil fuels, there was a tax credit created for those using windmills to create power. That was designed to be claimed if a wind farm was actually making the power. Now, earlier I said that many times if I've come down that road, I've seen windmills that were idle. But the blades had to be turning and the electricity had to be being produced in order to receive that tax credit. At the time, because I thought we were overly dependent on Middle Eastern oil and that it was creating issues for us geopolitically and militarily and otherwise, that it would be good to have a stimulus here to support the creation of wind energy. And so to give us the ability to stand on our own, less dependence on Middle East oil. But the main reason why I supported it was just to start the process and incentivize this to get it off the ground. It was going to be a short-term boost to help these new energy sources become competitive. And the original credit was designed under the law to last only 5.5 years, and there then would be no longer this credit. Well, like just about any other credit, subsidy, or anything else passed here which provides taxpayer support for production of something, it never expires. Few, if any of them, expire at the expiration date. So once again, once you get a law on the books, once you get a credit on the books, once you get a subsidy on the books, you can't get it off. Since the time the original bill has passed, the wind industry and its supporters have repeatedly come to Congress and said, just give us a few more years, and then wind will be competitive with taxpayer subsidies. And as a result, this 5.5-year program, which started in 1992, has been extended multiple times. In 2013, nearly 2 decades after the time which the subsidies were to expire, Congress changed the rules so the facilities only have to begin construction before the expiration date to automatically qualify for a future 10-year subsidy even before those windmills become operational. So if you're just in the business of producing windmills, as some of our major companies are, you're going to get the subsidy. You're going to get the tax credit. Whether or not the windmills are needed, whether or not they're producing electricity, you can just pour some concrete and start building the process, and you're going to get the credit. The result is that more and more wind facilities are being constructed irrespective of the needs of the electricity grid for market demand. Just last year, Warren Buffett, who's a smart investor, noted that wind isn't profitable without subsidies. He said, and I quote, "For example, on wind energy, we," meaning his company, "we get a tax credit if we build a lot of wind farms. That's the only reason to build them. They don't make sense without the tax credit." So it's, regardless of the demand, regardless of whether or not those windmills need to be turning and generating electricity, regardless of whether or not that electricity can be put into the grid, and by the way, the cost of wind energy is 3 to 4 times the cost of fossil fuel energy. Regardless of anything of that, the tax credit is there. In 2014, Congress retroactively extended the wind credit at the end of the year, and the general assumption here in Congress that the production tax credit will once again be extended at the end of this year is probably going to happen. Now, according to an estimate from the Nonpartisan Joint Committee on Taxation, this would add, if we continue and extend this tax credit, add another $10.5 billion to our budget. Clearly, it's way past time to end this seemingly never-ending subsidy. It's time to give the hard-working taxpayer a savings, and it's time to stop wasteful spending. If we can prevent Congress from just automatically expending this way beyond the original 5.5 years, decades beyond, we can save the taxpayer $10.5 billion. And so today I am adding to this chart and picture here $10.5 billion, which now totals $116 billion plus in terms of money that falls under the category of waste, fraud, and abuse. My colleagues cannot come down to this floor and argue that we can't cut a penny more of any program and defend the numerous, now well more than 20, examples of what has been defined as waste, fraud, and abuse, not by me, not by the Republican Party, but by nonpartisan agencies of the federal government. There it is, and stay tuned for next week's Waste of the Week.